Andrew, now it's time to switch to English, and I'm very happy that you took the time today to speak. You're an old pal. We share a common green history. I was actually quite surprised that after you worked at OVO in the UK, that you decided to move to Germany to start an energy company. And I think I reached out to you, or you reached out to me. I don't remember when you started 400, and we spoke about a software tool we developed to do customer acquisition via smartphone more easily. And that's when at first I thought, wow, this is really innovative. How these guys think about software and how important that is to them. And I guess things went really well because you sold your company to Octopus Energy, which is a really big name. I don't think it's as predominantly known in Germany as it is in UK, where it's a significant player. And so I'm actually very, very intrigued about what you're going to say. And I'm very happy that you took the time, and the stage is yours. Andrew Mack, thank you.
Vielen Dank, Martha, and great to be here. Let me share my screen, if I may. All right. So, yeah, I'm going to say a few words about Octopus Energy today. I'm sure some of you may have come across us. But just really give a bit more of an explanation about why we do what we do, and what that allows us to bring to the German market. As Malta rightly pointed out, I moved here just under 5 years ago to start my own energy company, which we called 400. We ended up selling that to Octopus Energy in the UK, and yeah, as the CEO of Octopus Energy describes it, it was love at first sight between the two businesses. Because as it turned out, as Octopus Energy was building up themselves in the UK, we were starting 400 here in Germany, but with a very, very similar set of ethos and values to each other. So when we came to merge in 2019, it felt very natural. And actually, I mix, when I do the company presentation, I mix in the explanation of what we do at 400 and what was done in Octopus in the UK, because the approaches are so similar. The big difference being the amount of capital that was available to grow the two businesses. So yeah, delighted to be part of the Octopus Energy family, and wanted to tell you a little bit more about what we do here today. So, Octopus Energy, we are a renewable energy services and technology business. Launched in the UK in 2016. We now have over 2 million Octopus Energy customers around the world. And we have 17 million customers on our energy technology platform. We're active in a number of countries. We've got over 1,000 people, and have won a lot of awards in our home market of the UK. So we're not just a retailer, although currently in Germany, we only cover the retail side of things today. But we've grown by acquisitions, and we've grown organically. And we now cover renewable energy generation. We install our own smart meters. We recently bought a business called Upside that deals with optimizing energy consumption over time. And we're in the process of expanding into the US, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, and expect to add more and more markets as we grow. We also have some big partnerships in place, perhaps most notably with E.ON in the UK, where we are moving across their entire customer base onto Kraken, which is our software platform. And we're doing something similar with Origin in Australia. So, what do we do? The best way to describe it is to say we use technology to deliver lower and more transparent prices, better service, and more sustainable energy to the customer. But it's important to say this isn't about technology first. This is about putting the customer first. So we developed our own software platform, Kraken, from scratch. But really with a view not to doing it for technology's sake, but for what it allows us to do in terms of helping customers. And I think a little known fact is that while Kraken is very powerful and it's a great piece of software, that's not really all of the secret sauce that sits behind our business. And it doesn't really describe why people like E.ON have decided to work with us in its entirety. So Kraken is a necessary piece of it, but it's also about how we structure our operating model in line with technology. So let me give you an example. A typical energy supplier serving millions of customers will have multiple touch points into their business. They will have teams looking at onboarding. They'll have teams looking at industry operations, looking at billing, looking at customer service, looking at home moving, looking at debt collection. And often as a customer, you might come into the customer service channel, but you'll end up being dealt with by somebody in billing or in home moves. And often you get passed from team to team, or your queries or your issues get dealt with by different people in different teams. And that's really how a lot of companies are set up to work. We at Octopus run our operation quite differently. And that is, we divide our customers up into groups, not our business. And we have separate teams dealing with discrete batches of customers. So as a customer, when you call into Octopus Energy, you will automatically be directed to your customer service team. And that'll be a team of no more than 10 or so people. And they will deal with you and a few tens of thousands of other customers. And they have the ability, leveraged by Kraken running in the background, to do literally anything. So if you have a billing question, if you have a home move, if you need your meter replaced, your customer service team can deal with that. And they have the ability and the authority to do anything with your account. So we give our teams a lot of responsibility and put them in charge of a lot of complexity. And the only way we can do that is because we've built our backend software at Kraken around this model. So it's a model that allows anybody to come into Kraken and do anything on a customer's account. And it's very easy, it's very straightforward. And the technology is seamless and all in one place. So any customer service agent can pick it up and within a couple of weeks become very proficient in it. So yes, we need our own technology, but crucially, we've reshaped our operating model around that technology to make it even better. And this is what we've done with E.ON in the UK. We've not just been migrating their customers across to Kraken, we've also been changing their operating model so that they operate in this way. So it's about innovative technology solving problems. And let me just give you a few examples, some serious, some more fun, of what we're up to. So in the UK, The Guardian runs a nice piece on us letting customers see our profit margins. Here in Germany, we operate on a cost plus pricing model. So we never earn any money on the kilowatt hours that we supply to customers. We just earn money on a fixed subscription fee. And in that way, our customers know they'll never get overcharged and they'll always get a fair price in the long term. And we can make that visible to our customers very easily using our technology platform. We can also make things fun. So we have a spin to win. If you submit a meter reading, every time you can spin a little mini roulette wheel and win money off your account. And this makes sense for us as a business. Meter readings are really helpful to track customer consumption. But it also makes what could be a very dull interaction with the customer fun. And we get a lot of positive response to that. We have partnerships with Tesla, both in Germany and in the UK. And that's about helping them find ways to support their customers in optimizing principally the solar generation and battery storage through the Powerwall, and finding ways to use that energy in a smarter, cheaper way for their customers. And then perhaps the most exciting area really is, how do we use technology to change customers' behavior? As we get to higher and higher penetrations of renewables, there will be times when increasingly power is very, very cheap. Power is even has a negative price. And it helps consumers. If we can get them to use energy when power prices are low or negative, we can bring down their bills at the same time as ensuring that they're using more renewable energy. And with that in mind, we've brought out a number of different tariffs, Agile, Octopus Go, Octopus Go Faster, to experiment and test different ways of getting customers to change their behavior. Let me give you one very specific example from the UK that we ran recently, which was called the Big Switch On. And this was when we knew there was a holiday coming up, when we knew energy consumption was going to be low. It was in May last year, so we knew solar production in particular was likely to be high. And we were pretty certain there would be an excess of renewable electricity on the grid. So we decided to run a test and say, what if we paid our customers to use energy? Not charge them, but we paid them to use energy during 2 short time periods during May. And we gave them the option to opt into that tariff, and really just to see what they would do. So we offered it to 100,000 UK customers. Half of those took it up, so 50,000 people went for it. And this wasn't about money. It's quite important, really. The average amount that the customer earned by us paying them to use energy was 50 pence. And yet 50,000 customers went for this. And the impact was huge. So you can see the lines along the bottom of the screen of the control group over the period of time where we had these two slots where we were paying people to use energy. And the pink and the red lines with the big spikes were the 2 groups of people who opted in for the big switch on. And so you can see that average consumption during that 2-hour window peaked tremendously. So just by offering a very, very small monetary incentive, we were able to change the behavior of a very large group of people, 50,000 customers, to have a significant impact on the UK grid. And to give you a sense of the scale of this impact, this is equivalent to Europe's largest battery pack being switched on for 2 hours at a time. And we did that by paying customers 50 pence each. So technology enables us to do this and makes this possible. But what's really important is finding ways to engage with customers to make it really easy and straightforward for them to change their behavior. And it's surprising actually just how much people are willing to change if they know they can save a little bit of money, but perhaps more importantly, they can help the grid be greener. So let me pause there and open it up to questions.
Oh, sorry, I was actually writing down a question. So thank you very much, Andrew. I think it's very, very interesting what you guys do. So, I mean, the audience obviously can also write questions. Let me go through the things I wrote down while listening to you. So the first question I actually have is, you know, you have a very different approach to how you deal with your service teams, what you said at the beginning. Yeah, that you have teams that are, I don't know if vertically integrated is the right way to phrase it, but that combine all the different, I guess, service units into one. And my question is, so typically you have different teams that they can share knowledge and you have scale within these teams. How do you guys make sure that Orange knows if Purple has done something really well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think part of that is in the way in which we grow our teams. So as we grow our customer base, each team will take on more and more people. And we monitor our teams quite closely, particularly monitoring the customer satisfaction by team. And the best teams we allow to grow faster. So let's say Team Blue is doing really, really well, and customers are super happy whenever they interact with Team Blue. As we sign up new customers, we'll give more and more of them to Team Blue until Team Blue reaches the stage where actually they're too big. And then what we'll do is a little bit like cell division. We'll take Team Blue and we'll split it in two, and we'll create two new teams. So a successful team then becomes two. Instead of having one team lead, we now have two team leads. And in that way, we disseminate knowledge into two new teams, and we take the best of what we're doing and we spread it in that way. So that's a fundamental part of teaching teams and sharing knowledge across teams, is because ultimately, if you trace back through the full evolution of our business, we started out with one customer service team, and every team that exists today has branched off that. So that's a very important part of transferring learnings from teams, and in particular, making sure that we're maximizing the learnings from the best teams and allowing them to grow. We also use technology a lot to share information. If you could see our internal Slack channel, you might be a little overwhelmed with the number of discussions going on at any point in time. But yeah, we use technology very, very intensely to share knowledge across teams and increasingly internationally as well. So we have part of our team here in Germany actually working on serving UK customers, because that's a great way to get up to speed in the Octopus way.
So what I always find interesting is Toyota has their own operating system. So in the way you move a screwdriver in one factory at Toyota is defined, and it's globally the same approach. Is it similar for you guys that these teams, if they develop a new approach, then it's automatically put in software and then rolled out to the other teams? Or could it be that there's significantly different approaches to two teams, even and they both perform well?
Yeah, so from a software perspective, we're constantly releasing updates based on the feedback from our teams. So we might do tens of updates to Kraken a week. So it's an ongoing release process. In terms of harmonizing the way we work, I think Kraken, which is largely standardized across all the geographies we operate in, Kraken really sets the tone for how to work in our customer operations team. So the operating model is very, very similar. Between businesses.
Yeah, that's really cool. So let me move on from this part. The next thing you said that was very interesting, I think, was around pricing and how that you're very transparent in what amount of money you earn and how much. Yeah, exactly. And that you just live off the monthly fee. So I recently received some advertising from, probably you know them too, from Tibber that said exactly the same thing. So my question is there a difference that I don't get as a consumer, or is it the same business model?
So they are different. And there are really two ways, I think, in which you can be simplistically transparent about your pricing. You can either pass through real-time prices to consumers. So with every hour as the wholesale price of gas or electricity goes up and down, pass that straight through to your customer. Or you can fix a price for a period of time and explain to your customer why it is fixed at the level it's fixed, and provide the cost breakdown for that price. So currently Tibber and us differ in the sense that Tibber tracks real-time wholesale prices and passes those directly through in real time to customers. We currently fix our prices for a period of time. Based on the cost of energy that we buy. We will be adding time of use tariffs, so real-time energy tariffs in the future. We have them in the UK. Actually, we have multiple different ones. So we've designed ones for customers with electric vehicles. We've designed ones for customers who want to track wholesale prices perfectly. But I think importantly, you need to recognize that not every customer wants to be exposed to the vagaries of the energy market. Not every customer wants to see their power price spike, when there's a cold snap in the winter and the wind stops blowing. And actually, I don't know how much you follow the Texas market where we operate. They recently had an enormous issue with an extreme weather event, and wholesale power prices went through the roof. And some customers ended up with bills of thousands of dollars for a week's worth of energy. So, under stress situations, tracking wholesale prices, particularly if they're uncapped, as they were in Texas, can actually be quite risky for customers. So, it's important to give customers options, but also to think about, how do we protect them, and make sure that we're not putting them in a difficult position.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point, and it's very, now it's interesting that you're from the UK and you share this knowledge. So when you had some different tariff examples, I think, from the UK, and I remember our discussions way back when we met around, and this is like a smart home situation, what was that in Germany, it's difficult to design time of use and tariffs because you have so much components and pricing that you cannot in any way, deal with as a supplier. Just the energy price itself is so small in comparison to what the end consumer pays. Is this significantly different to the UK market? And the second thing is, what do you see a future for Germany here, and what kind of future?
Yeah, yes, it is significantly different. So in the UK, it's possible to have a situation where you can pay people to use energy. I think in Germany, under the current system, that would never happen because there are just too many taxes and levies on the Arbeitspreis that keep that price artificially high. And it is artificial. So high power prices in Germany are a function of the regulatory environment in which we operate. And I think increasingly, and I feel quite strongly about this, it's inappropriate. If you go back 20 years ago, governments around the world were penalizing customers for using energy and trying their best to dissuade customers from using both gas and electricity. And that had some merit when most of your energy is coming from coal or gas. From a climate perspective, that can make sense. But fast forward 20 years, we're now in a situation where more than half of our electricity in Germany is generated by renewables. Running an electric car is increasingly cleaner than running a diesel or petrol vehicle. And yet we still have punitive taxes and levies on electricity bills. And increasingly, it makes no sense to have the highest electricity prices in Europe and yet some of the cleanest power. So, we really need a big shift in thinking away from penalizing customers for using electricity to the opposite and saying, actually, we want customers to use as much electricity as possible because we want them to stop using oil, petrol, diesel, gas. And I think, that mentality hasn't yet reached government, hasn't yet infiltrated the regulatory setup that we have here in Germany. It will, it must, but it's moving too slowly. But we need to get to a world where electricity in Germany is seen as a good thing, where it's much, much cheaper, where we get rid of Stromsteuer. Ideally, we find another way to pay for the EEG without putting it on consumer bills. We make electricity much cheaper, and we help consumers to move to electric vehicles, to move to air source, ground source heat pumps for home heating, because long term, we know that has to be done. If we're going to hit our 2030, 2050 climate targets in Germany, we must electrify. But it's crazy to be pushing electrification and pouring money into subsidizing electric cars, when at the same time we're penalizing people for putting electricity into those cars. So this needs to change. It will change, but it's not changing fast enough.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And if we change the regulatory environment, it would also make pricing more interesting, and we'd have much more optionality and much more steerability, I think, of the market, exactly like you said. So I couldn't agree with you more. And before we move to questions from the audience, let me one last one is, so if we go to your big switch on, which I also thought was very interesting, is how actually do you recruit and communicate with customers? Do you send them mails? Do you fax? What's your channel which you interact?
Yeah, so it's all digital.
It's all digital.
It's all digital, so it's emails and it's notifications in the customer portal. We benefit from having a very engaged set of customers at Octopus, and really I think it links back to the ethos and why we set up the company, and we're genuinely trying to do what's best for the customer. There are two things at the core of Octopus, and they are social justice and climate change. So we are trying to do good for people and trying to do good for the planet. And as our customers learn about that and engage with that, they become very engaged, loyal customers. And you see that in our Trustpilot scores in the markets in which we operate. Mm-hmm. So it really is about having an engaged, happy group of customers who, when we say, hey, we've got this new idea, do you want to try it? Turn around and say, yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, it's creating that long-term engagement, that long-term passion, really between us and our customers that's so important. And I'd say it surprised us. We asked 100,000 customers if they wanted to do this, and half of them said yes. We didn't expect that level of response. So it's great, and I think really encouraging to see that customers want to help make the grid greener.
Yeah, and if you look at this company, then focusing on the customer and being honest about prices means you don't need to be the cheapest and still be kind of successful, or pretty successful. So thank you. Those were my questions. Let's move on to the audience and go through. Christian shared a question about your team sizes at Octopus. How big do you grow teams before you divide your cells, as you stated it?
Yeah, 12 is the maximum size. So
and then you divide that into 6.
And we divide that into 2 teams of 6. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Easy answer. And then Timo Eggers. Good to see you here, Timo. Do you think the Octopus way to do energy business is a role model for the German utilities, aka Stadtwerke?
Good question. To be honest, I think we occupy a different space from many Stadtwerke. So actually, Malte, you said something earlier about hyperlocal and how that was a new trend. And for me, I think as a Stadtwerke, that's a viable route to go down, is to build a hyperlocal business, and arguably many of them are in some ways yes, traditional, but they're still quite hyperlocal. For us, we're almost at the other end of the spectrum. We're hyper international. And we're trying to create the same customer experience in Japan as we are in the US, as we are in Australia, as we are here in Germany, and share technology between those locations. So, I think for some Stadtwerke, it might make sense to adopt Kraken and a similar operating model to the one we have. But I think also for many of them, there's a different space to be occupied, and we can coexist quite happily alongside each other. I think when I look at people like E.ON, for example, I think there's probably a stronger argument that the operating model that we've selected and the way in which we work is more logical for them to adopt. And we've seen that in the UK with E.ON taking on Kraken and the operating model that we have around customer operations.
Is there anything a Stadtwerk could learn from you, or is it what comes to mind?
Yeah.
What question should I call you if I were a Stadtwerke employee, managing director?
We may have had some conversations with Stadtwerke over the last few months. So I have some questions in mind. I think for me, the conversation makes sense in terms of us thinking about how we might work with a Stadtwerke, only in circumstances where there is an appetite for quite significant change. Because, as I said, we're not selling a software solution to the partners we license Kraken to. It's more than that. It really is about reshaping your way of operating, your way of thinking as an energy business. And I think while that sounds great, for a lot of companies, that's a very difficult thing to do for many, many reasons. So I think the best conversations we're having with potential licensing partners for Kraken are with people who say, we're up for fundamentally changing the way we do business. And that's where Origin came from. So Origin was one of the biggest players in the Australian market. And they spent several years going around the globe, talking to energy companies, understanding what future models they wanted to move to. They recognized that they needed a change. And I've spoken to them, both at my previous employers as well as at Octopus during that process. And they ended up deciding to work with us at Octopus on the basis that they felt that the transformation they wanted to make to their business would be best served by adopting the model that we've been developing.
You said the word Kraken so many times. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit about what Kraken actually does. Does it replace the SAP? Does it replace the Salesforce CRM? Does it replace a customer service? What is it?
It is all of the above. So Kraken was built up from scratch on day one. Actually, the way in which Octopus did it was they started with a bunch of off-the-shelf software to get the UK business running. And in parallel, they built a shadow system, Kraken, and gradually took over all of the functionality that was provided by the likes of Juniper and Utilisoft. And so Kraken has been a platform built from the very outset and to do everything, to do all the functionality that's required. So the beauty of that is it means the customer operations teams have one single interface through which they can do everything. And it records every customer interaction that a customer has ever had in a very easy way. So when you're talking to a customer, you can go back and look at, okay, 2 years ago, we had a conversation and we covered this topic and this was the answer. And it's right there in front of you as a customer operations agent. So its use of data is fantastic and makes it so much easier to deal with customers. But yeah, it is the platform on which we run absolutely everything at Octopus.
Okay, so all the specialties of the German energy regulation are also integrated into Kraken.
Yine. You'll hear from Tobias later from PowerCloud. So we use PowerCloud to do the really technical market communication work in Germany, just because that is so bespoke to the German market and so particular. But everything else is done by Kraken.
Andrew, I guess that's the way we try to defend ourselves from innovative English companies.
It's working. I tell you, it's a good barrier to entry.
We're very good at that.
Actually, nice little story. When I started out building 400, we have to sign agreements with each of the network operators, of which there are 1,400 or so. And so for several months, my postman was turning up with cardboard boxes every day of network operator contracts. Just the paperwork burden alone was insane. So I'm very glad we have that behind us.
Yeah,
a great barrier to entry.
So, Andrew, I must say kudos to you. I think when I gave my presentation yesterday, there were no questions, and your chat is overwhelmingly full. So great. Let me try to read some more questions here. So, how many do you, when you decide to split up your teams, right? Do you have like a number of customers they can serve before you split, or how do you actually decide on when it's time to split?
Yeah, it's the exact split is more about the number of people we have in the team rather than the number of customers. But obviously the size of the team is very, very closely linked to the number of customers. But it does depend. Sometimes you build up a group of customers who may require more or less support, so there's some flexibility there. But it might be around 50,000, 60,000 customers being dealt with by a single team.
And there's some questions regarding your big switch on. So the big switch on is intriguing to many people. Maybe you can elaborate, is a smart meter relevant for this tariff? And maybe the UK is more progressive with smart meters than Germany?
Yes, sadly the UK is much more progressive with smart meters. Yes, this was a smart meter based offer.
Okay, so that's necessary in order to do these time consumption based tariff. And the 50 cents, is the 50 cents to just use more energy in that time frame, or do you have to actually use a certain amount of energy in that time frame? How exactly is that?
Yeah, no, there was no requirement to do anything, frankly. It's just that any energy used within one of these 2-hour slots, we would pay the customer between 2 and 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So then it was up to the customer to figure out, what devices to turn on, how to make the most use of that. We simply presented them with the pricing, explained how it was going to work, and let them do it. There were no constraints or limits on what they could do.
Okay. So one final question. I mean, you obviously had the nice situation as when you started as Octopus, you had a green field and you could decide on how to get to where you want to be. Now the Stadtwerke are obviously not exactly green, but they still, I mean, I think actually are quite impressed by what you guys are doing. What could I do and what kind of steps would I need to take to mirror your approach or to somehow get close to what you are doing?
I think the first thing to do is to look at what are you trying to achieve? What is the fundamental goal of your business? Because a lot of businesses have quite, we may all be energy retailers, but we actually have quite different goals of what we're setting out to do. And with Octopus, we're very, very clear. Our goal really comes down to making a big green dent in the world. So there's no point in us having businesses around the world that serve 50 or 100,000 customers. That's just not interesting. We're about getting millions and tens of millions of customers, bringing them together and having a real impact. So, with that in mind, it drives us to make certain decisions and trade-offs about the way in which we operate. And I'm very conscious that for some Stadtwerke, that's not what they're setting out to do. They're setting out to serve 50, 100,000 customers within a very local area and do something very specific for their customer base. So I think that's the first place I would start to say, what do you want to achieve? Is it similar enough to what we at Octopus are working on? Because if it's not, there are probably better partners out there for you, frankly. But if it is, then the second question is, how open are you to change? Are you ready to rip up your existing operating model and really completely rethink how you work? And again, that's a big step and has lots and lots of implications for people in particular, and ways of working. And I think people are people. The approach we use doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes it feels a bit like managed chaos because we're doing so many things at once and so fast, and without procedures or processes in place to govern how people should work. So it can be quite unsettling for the people working in this environment if they're not used to that level of uncertainty and unpredictability. But for us, that's what we need to go through to move fast. We need to stretch absolutely everybody. So yeah, I think you know for Stadtwerke, it's not obvious or not a given that working with us, that following a similar model, that licensing Kraken is the right path forward. But I think for some of them it will be, and for those for whom it is a great fit, I think you know, there's the potential for us to do some very exciting things together, and ultimately deliver what we want to do, which is changing the way energy markets work for the better.
Maybe we can squeeze in. I'm sorry, Max, that we're in your time now already. Please excuse us. One final question, and it's the question around how often you communicate with your customers. So Stadtwerke oftentimes have a fear of communicating with customers because there's an angst that they wake up these customers, and when they wake up, they switch to a different utility. Is that the same way you approach the customer?
No, but I've heard exactly that sentiment expressed by some of the biggest energy companies in Europe as well, who think exactly that way. And for me, it's kind of sad if you're in a position where talking to your customers fills you with fear because you feel they might leave you. Something's not quite right. So no, for us, I think we go to the other extreme in many cases. So for example, in the UK, we chase customers for meter readings every quarter. And if we don't get a meter reading within 3 months from a customer, we don't provide them with a bill. And we hassle them to give us a meter reading so that they can have a bill. So we're doing the opposite. We're basically forcing them in a nice way to communicate with us regularly and to keep us up to date on the energy that they're using. So it's a very different model. It's much more high touch in that respect. And so, yeah, I think that's only possible if you don't fear talking to your customers and you don't fear the feedback they'll give you. If they were to peel back the layers of your business and look underneath and look inside the machine, if they were to do that and discover, oh, you know, what, you're making a 40% gross margin on me. Yeah, you should fear talking to those customers, but you shouldn't be doing that to customers in the first place. Mm-hmm. You know, for us, we don't have those kinds of things to hide. So yeah, we can approach customers in a very different way.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it was a fascinating talk, and if we had an hour more time, I'm sure we could fill that next hour with a very engaging conversation as well. It was very good to see you again. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And
my pleasure.
We wish you all the best, and well, maybe we'll see you again soon with new news from Octopus.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of the day.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.